Back yet again for box and whisker plots. This is an idea, guys, that you will use on the AP exam. Okay, so you learn it in the beginning, you use it just about in every chapter, it pops up constantly. Whether or not you're asked to describe a distribution, which is very likely you will be asked to describe a distribution from a given box plot. And as long as you dot your T's and cross your I's, you're good on those. They're really easy, okay? We'll learn some acronyms, learn some tricks there. Also, whenever we get to the more advanced statistics, sometimes box and whisker plots will be useful to get a big picture of the data. And that's what we're going to look at. Mainly in, number one, which is the main thing we're going to be doing. So it wants you to determine the 5-number summary. We're just going to hop right in, try to get through this one pretty quickly instead of me rambling on. If you want to hear me ramble on, go back to 2 videos ago on, I don't remember what it was. So the 5-number summary, some people from last year might call it the 5 numbers you meet in heaven. This is your minimum, your Q1, your median, your Q3, and your maximum. And some quick definitions. This is the lowest number. This is the 25th percentile. That means that 25% of your data set is below this number. Your median is your median, okay, which means that it's your 50th percentile. It means that half of your data is below that mark, half of it is above. Q3, as you probably guessed it, is the 75th percentile. You can also, people call it quartile, it's kind of the same thing, okay? And maximum is your highest number. And you can see on the box and whisker plot on part A, that is how those are displayed. And I'm going to show you how to do that on the calculator, because it makes things easier. So again, we've got to enter our data in. If you get anything this summer, entering data into list 1 and list 2, if you get that, I mean, hey, you're coming in ahead of most AP statistics kids in the country, and that's huge. Okay, so we got to enter in our data. 98 cubic feet. I should be a little bit more specific here on what we're talking about, but I'm just trying to show you the mechanics. We definitely need to include these, the context of the problems in our answers. That's super important. I kind of have a feeling that maybe that might have been one of the things that tripped up some people last year. They just forgot to do it, and could have been the difference between a 2 and a 3, which really breaks my heart and really frustrates me. For them, not at them, because AP's kind of stupid sometimes in the way they grade things. Alright, so there's my data. I want to find the 5-number summary, so I'm going to go to Stats, go over to Calculate, one variable stats. We've done this before. L1 is what we're primarily working in. Calculate, okay? We don't want the mean. Notice the mean was not one of these numbers. We also don't want the standard deviation, okay? Those don't really go with 5-number summary. That's a different type of data. We'll go into the specifics there a little later. The minimum is 56.5. The Q1 is 58.5. The median is 73.5. Kind of jumps there a little bit. 75.5 to the 75th to the Q3, third quartile, and then the maximum is 103.5. So that is your 5-number summary. And from there, you will be expected at some point, a lot of points actually, to construct a box plot from these 5 numbers. And you can see on part A, they've labeled where those fall on a box plot. Now, on your calculator, here's how you can do that. This is going to be in the graphing section. So if I go to second, stat plot, and I go to plot 1, I want to turn it on. Okay, and then you have different types of graphs you can do. We are always going to use the first box plot. It's called the modified box plot. We'll go into that a little bit later. I don't want to overwhelm you right now. So select that. You want your L1 to be your X list. That's the only list we have, the only data, only one variable here. And this is a cargo volume of minivans. Frequency is 1. We only want those occurring one time. Okay, we don't have, every time we see 98, that doesn't mean there's 2 or 3 bands that are 98, just 1. Okay, and to actually graph this, the easiest way is just to press zoom 9, which was zoom stat, and you can see your box plot here. Now notice that the difference in this box plot and the box plot you see on your paper is that there's a disconnect here between the line of that the upper quartile, the top 25%, and then the dot. That means that this maximum value is an outlier. That means that it is way more than the rest of the data, and it's heavily affecting the data. So that's the difference. That's why we chose the first box plot answer, so that we could see if there were any outliers. It's going to be a skill that's going to come in handy a little bit later. Okay. Part B, how does it help you visualize the data? You can see that there's a whole, that the upper 50% is a larger area. I mean, the upper 50% goes from 73.5 to 103.5. That's a span of 30, whereas the lower 50% only has a span of like 17 or 18, from 56.5 to 73.5. And you can see that from the picture. If it's a modified box plot, you can say that you can see outliers in the data, which we can see here. You can see the maximum and minimum, which give you the range of the data. Subtract those two to find the range. One of the things I learned this week is that range is always to be used as a noun. Never use it as a verb. Don't say the data ranges from 56.5 to 103.5. It's not really wrong, it's just really vague. It's a lot better if you say the range is whatever this subtracted from that is. Okay, 47. Okay, whatever that is. Okay, so anyways, you can get that from a box and whisker plot. Again, enter in your data. Second, stat plot. Make sure plot 1 is on. Go to modify box plot, the middle one, and then zoom. And if you just press 9, that's zoom stat. So zoom 9, it pops it up for you, and you can get a general idea of what things look like. Okay. For part C, what measures of central tendency can easily be identified? Can we find the mean on a box plot? No, the mean is not there. Mean is not used on a box plot at all. Okay, the median, it is. Those are measures of central tendency. So we can determine the mean. We can determine the median. That's the middle line. You can see that from the diagram drawn. We cannot determine the mean. All right, for part D, what measures of spread? That's how far things are spread out. We cannot determine the standard deviation. Standard deviation talks about how the data is spread out. We cannot determine that from a box plot. Like I said earlier, mean and standard deviation go together. They're not on box plots. Okay, you'll see them in other types of data displays. But we can see our range or our IQR. The range is the maximum minus the minimum. The IQR, interquartile range, is Q3 minus Q1. Both of those can be used and will be used at some time or another. Okay, actually the IQR is used to compute the outliers. So that point on the calculator that showed up randomly on the outside, well, you can figure that out by using the IQR. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's a little bit more advanced. We'll get there in the end of August probably. Okay, so at this point here is your minimum. Here's your Q1, the first line on the box. The median is the middle line in the box. Your Q3 is the last line in the box, and then this is your maximum here, which is the last dot, whether it's an outlier or not. This point here just represents anything past this point is going to be an outlier. That's why this dot is over there. Okay, so 25% of your data falls here on the line, 25% falls here in the first little rectangle, 25% falls in this little skinny rectangle. So that's kind of interesting that 1/4 of the data falls in this little bitty skinny rectangle, and then the other 25% of your data is in this big section here because of that outline. Okay, so and that kind of answers some of the other questions on down through there. So for G, you can just write on the calculator, spit out an outlier. We will talk about that formula a little bit later. Again, I don't want to bombard you with that. It is important. It was on this last year's AP exam. It was number 1 on the free response, but I just don't want to give you too much to try to remember. Okay, so the rest of those on that activity are very similar. You're doing the same kind of thing. Again, if you have questions, comment, use GroupMe, use the comments on Google Classroom, and we'll get things straightened out. I just want you getting a little bit familiar with what these graphs look like and how we can use them. All right, thank you very much.